The beast market was where broken things went to die, and as Senna knelt in the mud before a cage that held nothing but shadows and silence, she understood she belonged here too. A poor Omega with 5 copper coins to her name, and a secret that would see her burned if anyone discovered it. The other buyers walked past the cage without a second glance. Why would they stop? The creature inside hadn't moved in days, muzzled so tightly its fur had worn away in bloody patches. Ribs jutting like a shipwreck beneath matted silver fur. It was worthless. Broken. Better off dead. But Senna saw what they couldn't. When she reached through the bars with trembling fingers, the wolf's eyes opened. And she forgot how to breathe. Those eyes weren't the amber or brown of a common wolf. They were pale gray, shot through with veins of molten gold. Ancient. Aware. Furious. 5 coins, she whispered to the merchant because it was all she had, because something in those eyes commanded her to speak. The merchant laughed. Take him. He'll be dead by morning anyway. Senna dragged the cage home through the rain, speaking softly to the creature who never once looked away from her face. She didn't know that she'd just spent her last coins on the missing Alpha King. She didn't know that enemies had been searching for him for 3 brutal months. She didn't know that by saving him, she'd set into motion events that would shake the foundations of a kingdom. All she knew was that something in his eyes looked exactly like her own reflection. Shattered. Hidden. Desperately alone. Neither of them understood that this moment would change everything. The village of Brackenmore existed in the permanent shadow of the Thornspire Mountains, where sunlight came grudgingly and hope came even less. Senna had lived on its outskirts for 3 years now, ever since she'd fled the only home she'd ever known, with nothing but the clothes on her back and a mark on her shoulder that meant death if anyone saw it. She pulled her shawl tighter as she moved through the beast market's muddy lanes. The smell hit her first. Unwashed fur, old blood, fear. So much fear it coated her tongue like copper. Cages lined both sides of the thoroughfare, filled with creatures that had outlived their usefulness. Lame horses destined for slaughter. Hunting dogs too old to run. Wolves captured from the wild, their spirits broken by chains and starvation. This was where broken things went to die. Senna shouldn't have been here. She couldn't afford to buy anything, couldn't afford to draw attention to herself. But this morning she'd woken with the pull again, that strange tugging sensation beneath her ribs that had gotten her into so much trouble before. Her gift, her curse, the thing that whispered when something needed finding, when something needed saving. Today, the pull was almost unbearable. She passed a cage of matted wolflings, their eyes dull with despair. The pull didn't stop. She passed a scarred timber wolf, magnificent even in chains. The pull grew stronger, dragging her deeper into the market, toward a section she'd never ventured into before. The death row. Here, the cages were smaller. The creatures inside had stopped fighting. Most had stopped moving entirely. Merchants didn't bother calling out prices. Senna's feet stopped of their own accord. The cage was shoved into a corner where shadows pooled like spilled ink. At first, she thought it was empty. Then the shadows shifted, and she saw the wolf. She gasped softly. He was silver, or he had been, before neglect had turned his coat to a dull, matted gray. His ribs pressed against his skin like the bars of another cage. Iron cuffs circled his front legs, rubbed raw and weeping. But the muzzle was the worst. God's. The muzzle. It was made of black iron, wrapped so tightly around his snout that the metal had cut into his flesh. Dried blood crusted around the edges. The contraption was designed to do more than silence. It was designed to humiliate. To break. Senna's hands trembled as she gripped the bars. "What did they do to you?" she whispered. The wolf didn't move. Didn't lift his head. He might have been dead already. But then she felt it. A pulse of something beneath the surface. Her gift flared to life, and what it showed her made no sense at all. This wasn't a wolf. Or rather, it wasn't only a wolf. There was something else beneath the fur and bone, something vast and coiled and barely contained. Power. The kind that made her instincts scream at her to run. She should have backed away, should have left immediately. Instead, Senna crouched lower and stretched her fingers through the bars. I see you, she breathed. Whatever you really are, I see you. The wolf's eyes opened. Senna's breath died in her throat. Those eyes, they weren't right, weren't natural. Pale gray like winter storms, but shot through with veins of gold that pulsed with their own inner light. Wolves didn't look at you like that. Like they were memorizing your face. Like they were weighing your soul. How much? Senna asked, her voice cracking. The merchant barely glanced over. That one? Won't last the night. 5 coins if you want to save yourself the trouble of watching it die in the street. 5 coins. Senna's hand went to the pouch at her belt. She had exactly 5 copper coins. Everything she'd earned from a month of gathering herbs. Her food money. Her survival. The wolf's eyes never left her face. I'll take him, she heard herself say. Getting the cage home took hours. The wolf was too weak to walk, so Senna had to drag the entire cage through the muddy streets. Rain began to fall halfway through, soaking her to the bone. People stared. A few laughed. Nobody offered to help. By the time she reached her cottage at the forest's edge, night had fallen and her arms had gone numb. She hauled the cage inside, slammed the door against the storm, and collapsed against the wall, gasping. The wolf watched her from behind the bars. Those strange eyes tracked her every movement as she lit a fire, as she gathered supplies to treat his wounds. I don't know what you are, Senna said quietly, approaching the cage, but I'm going to help you anyway. So please, don't make me regret this. The latch clicked open. The wolf didn't move. Senna crawled inside the cage. Up close, the damage was even worse. Infected wounds. Parasites. Dehydration so severe she was amazed he was still breathing. This first, she murmured, reaching for the muzzle. Her fingers found the clasp at the back of his skull. It was locked with some kind of mechanism she didn't recognize, almost like a seal. She pressed harder. The metal grew warm under her touch. The wolf made a sound, a low, rumbling vibration that might have been a warning or a plea. I know it hurts. Senna's fingers traced the edges of the muzzle, searching for any weakness. Her gift flared without her permission. Power flooded from her palms into the iron, and the metal screamed. Not figuratively, literally screamed, a high keening wail that made her ears ring. The muzzle's clasp shattered. The contraption fell away, clattering to the cage floor. Senna stared at her hands. She hadn't meant to do that. Hadn't meant to use her gift so openly. The wolf moved. His great head lifted slowly, painfully. His jaw opened and closed, testing its freedom for the first time in months. And then he looked at her. Really looked at her. Those gold-veined eyes blazed with intensity, not gratitude, something far more complicated. Recognition, calculation, and beneath it all, hope. The wolf's eyes flashed pure molten gold. Alpha gold. Senna scrambled backward out of the cage, her pulse spiking with sudden, terrible understanding. What are you? She gasped. The wolf held her gaze, and in the dancing firelight she could have sworn she saw his muzzle curve, almost like a smile. Senna didn't sleep that night. She sat with her back against the far wall, knees drawn to her chest, watching the wolf who watched her right back. The fire crackled between them, and every time those gold-veined eyes caught the light, her pulse jumped. Alpha eyes. She hadn't imagined it. In the moment before she'd scrambled away, his eyes had blazed with the pure, unmistakable gold of a dominant alpha. But that was absurd. Alpha wolves didn't exist in cages at beast markets. Alpha wolves ruled packs, commanded armies, bent the world to their will. They certainly didn't get captured and muzzled and sold for 5 copper coins. Unless they did. Unless someone wanted them gone badly enough. Dawn came gray and cold through her single window. Senna hadn't moved from her position, but exhaustion was clawing at her now. The wolf hadn't moved either, but his breathing seemed stronger than it had been last night. Steadier. "You're healing," Senna observed, her voice rough. "Faster than you should be." The wolf's ears twitched. "That's not normal either." She studied him in the pale morning light. The infected gashes on his legs already looked better. The raw patches where the muzzle had worn away his fur showed new pink skin beneath. Even his ribs seemed less prominent, though she hadn't fed him yet. Healing like that wasn't natural. Healing like that was magic. Senna stood slowly. "I'm going to get water. And food. For both of us." She turned toward the door. The wolf made a sound. A low, urgent whine that stopped her in her tracks. Senna looked back. The wolf had risen onto unsteady legs, his attention fixed not on her, but on the window. His ears were flat against his skull. His hackles had risen along his spine. Warning signs, danger signs. "What is it?" Senna breathed. Then she heard it. Footsteps outside her cottage. Multiple sets. Moving slowly, circling, the crunch of boots on gravel, the metallic clink of weapons. Senna's blood turned to ice. No one came to her cottage. She'd chosen this location specifically because no one had reason to visit. The wolf growled, a sound so deep she felt it in her bones. A knock at the door. 3 sharp raps. "Healer." A man's voice, smooth and wrong. "We know you're in there. Open up." Senna's hand flew to her shoulder, pressing against the mark hidden beneath her dress. The brand she'd received the night she fled. Had they found her? "We're not here to hurt you," the voice continued. "We just want to talk about the animal you purchased yesterday." The animal. Senna's gaze snapped to the wolf. He was staring at the door now, every muscle coiled tight. The gold in his eyes had intensified. They weren't here for her. They were here for him. "I'll count to 3, the voice said. "Then we'll let ourselves in." 1. Senna grabbed her skinning knife from the table. 2. The wolf moved between her and the door, positioning his body as a shield. Despite his weakness, despite 3 months of starvation and abuse, he was protecting her. The back window shattered. A man came through in a shower of glass, moving faster than any human should. Senna slashed wildly with her knife. The blade caught nothing but air. Then the wolf struck. Even half dead, even starved to the bone, he was devastating. He hit the intruder mid-chest with enough force to send them both crashing through the front door. Wood splintered. Someone outside shouted. And then the morning erupted into chaos, snarling, screaming, the wet sound of teeth meeting flesh. Senna didn't think. She ran. Not away from the cottage, toward the cellar door hidden beneath her bed. The tiny underground space she'd dug herself for exactly this kind of moment. She dropped into darkness just as more glass shattered above her. Silence. Terrible silence. Senna pressed her hand over her mouth, forcing herself to breathe slowly. Above her, footsteps creaked across the floorboards. "She's not here," someone said. "Neither is the wolf. Draken's down, throat torn out." A long pause. Then, "Find them. The master wants them both now." Both. They wanted them both. The footsteps retreated. Senna stayed frozen in the darkness, counting heartbeats. When she finally emerged, her cottage was destroyed. Furniture overturned, windows smashed, a body lying in the doorway, human-shaped but wrong somehow, with 2 sharp teeth and 2 long fingers. And in the middle of it all, sitting calmly among the wreckage, was the wolf. He was covered in blood, none of it his own. "You killed him," Senna whispered, staring at the body. The wolf's head turned toward her. Those eyes held no remorse, only patience. "Who are you?" Senna demanded. "What are you? Who are those people and why do they want you?" The wolf held her gaze for a long moment. Then the air around him began to shimmer. Senna stumbled backward as light folded in on itself around the wolf's form. Bones cracked, muscles shifted, fur rippled and retreated like a tide pulling back from shore. Where the wolf had been, a man now knelt. He was naked, scarred. His silver hair fell past his shoulders, matted and tangled. The wounds from the muzzle had transferred to his human face, raw marks across his jaw and cheeks. But none of that mattered. Because his eyes, pale gray shot through with gold, were the same. And his face. Senna had seen that face before. Everyone in the kingdom had seen that face. It was stamped on coins, painted in portraits. "You're dead," she breathed. The man smiled, cracked lips, dried blood, still somehow devastating. "Evidently not," said the Alpha King of Arendor. Senna's knife clattered to the floor. The man, the king, watched her with an expression she couldn't read. His scarred body still crouched among the wreckage of her home. "You're dead," she repeated, because the words didn't make sense any other way. "King Valdric died 3 months ago. The entire kingdom mourned." "They burned something," Valdric agreed. His voice was rough, scraped raw from months of disuse. "It wasn't me." Senna's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the broken remnants of her only chair. The Alpha King, the ruler of Arendor, the most powerful shifter in 7 kingdoms. She had bought him for 5 copper coins. "How?" she managed. Valdric stood slowly, painfully. The movement revealed more scars, not just fresh ones from his captivity, but older marks that spoke of battles, of assassination attempts survived. "A coup," he said simply. "My brother's advisor, a sorcerer named Malachor, wanted my throne. He knew he couldn't take it by force, so he took it by treachery instead." He moved to the shattered window. Even naked, even battered, he commanded the space like he owned it. 3 months ago, I was summoned to a peace negotiation at the border. The message came from an ally I trusted. His jaw tightened. When I arrived, Malachor was waiting. He had a binding collar. Old magic, dark magic, the kind that locks a shifter in animal form and strips away everything that makes them who they are. Senna thought of the muzzle, the iron cuffs, the cage. "He sold you," she said hollowly, "like an animal." "He tried to kill me first." Valdric's voice was flat. "When the collar didn't break my mind the way it should have, he realized I might eventually escape. So he muzzled me to prevent me from commanding anyone, and sold me to traders who had no idea what they were carrying." He turned to face her. "I spent 3 months being dragged from market to market, waiting for someone to see through the curse, waiting for someone to remove that damned muzzle so I could shift back." "But no one did," Senna whispered. "No one could. The muzzle was sealed with Malachor's magic. It would only open for someone with a gift strong enough to break it." His gaze sharpened on her face. "Someone like you." The words landed like stones dropped in still water. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said automatically. "You broke a sorcerer's seal with your bare hands." Valdric's voice was quiet but relentless. "You sensed what I was when everyone else saw only a dying wolf. You have power, healer." Senna's hand flew to her shoulder before she could stop herself. Valdric's eyes tracked the movement. "Who marked you?" She didn't answer. "Someone hurt you because of your gift." "It wasn't a question." "That's none of your concern," Senna said. "You're the king. You have kingdoms to reclaim and sorcerers to kill. What happens to one Omega healer is nothing to you." Valdric studied her for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps. "You saved my life," he said finally. "You spent your last coins on a creature everyone else had abandoned. You broke magic that should have been unbreakable." He took a step toward her. "That is not nothing." Senna's chest tightened. "Those men will come back," Valdric continued. "Malachor will have felt the collar break. He'll know I've shifted back. He'll send more hunters, and they will tear this village apart looking for me." "Then you should leave," Senna said. "Go reclaim your throne. I'll disappear." "They saw you." Valdric's voice hardened. "They know you helped me. Malachor doesn't leave witnesses. If I leave you here, you'll be dead within a week." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What do you want from me?" she asked. Valdric moved closer. "Come with me. I need to reach allies who can help me take back my throne. But Malachor's curse isn't fully broken. There are still chains on my power. I need someone whose gift can counter his magic. I'm a healer. I make poultices and set bones. I don't fight sorcerers. You broke his seal. By accident." "There are no accidents with magic." Valdric stopped directly in front of her. "Come with me, and I'll help you learn to control your gift. I'll protect you from whoever gave you that mark. And when I reclaim my throne, I'll give you anything you ask for." Senna wanted to laugh. An Omega healer bargaining with a king? But then she thought of the men who had come for him, the body in her doorway, the life she'd so carefully built, now shattered. "What's the catch?" she asked quietly. "My allies will want proof of my identity. The only way to provide that is to have a witness whose word cannot be questioned." "An Omega," Senna realized. "Yes. And what does witnessing involve?" The silence stretched too long. "Travel with me," Valdric said finally. "Stay close to me. Let people see that I trust you." He paused. "And when we reach the capital, you will stand beside me." Senna caught something unspoken in his tone. "Your enemies will assume I'm your mistress. They'll assume you're under my protection, my full protection. If they believe that, they won't touch you. If they believe you're just some healer I picked up, you become leverage." Through the broken window, Senna heard voices in the distance, the search parties, regrouping. "We need to move," Valdric said. "Now. Do you have anything here you can't leave behind?" Senna thought of her herb collection, her remedy books, the single lock of her mother's hair she'd kept all these years. "Nothing," she said. Valdric's expression softened briefly. "Then we leave immediately. There's a resistance camp 3 days north. If we can reach it—" He stopped mid-sentence, his head snapping toward the door. "What is it?" Senna asked. Valdric's eyes had gone full gold. "Too late," he growled. "They're already here." Valdric shifted before Senna could take another breath. One moment, a scarred man stood before her. The next, a massive silver wolf filled the space. Larger than before, his fur gleaming with otherworldly light, his eyes blazing pure gold. He snarled a command she felt more than heard. "Run." The front wall exploded inward. Senna threw herself sideways as debris showered the room. Through the dust and chaos, she saw figures pouring through the gap, 3, 4, 5 of them, moving with unnatural speed. Valdric met them head-on. The sounds were horrific. Bones snapping, bodies hitting walls, a scream that cut off too suddenly. Senna didn't watch. She scrambled toward the back of the cottage, toward the cellar. But there were more of them outside. She could see their shadows through the shattered windows, circling. Trapped. A hand closed around her ankle. Senna screamed, kicking wildly. One of the hunters had gotten past Valdric, a woman with hollow cheeks and fingers that ended in black claws. She grinned, revealing teeth filed to points. "The master wants you alive," she hissed, but he didn't say undamaged. Her claws raked toward Senna's face. Silver fur and fury slammed into the woman from the side. Valdrick's jaws closed around her throat. And then, there was only blood. Senna gagged, pressing her hand over her mouth. Valdrick's wolf form turned to her, muzzle dripping crimson. Those gold eyes held no hesitation. "On my back. Now." She didn't question it. She grabbed fistfuls of silver fur and hauled herself onto his back, just as more hunters crashed through the windows. Valdrick launched through the hole in the front wall. The world became a blur of speed and wind and desperate survival. Senna buried her face in his fur, clinging with every ounce of strength as Valdrick tore through the village streets. Shouts erupted behind them, the pounding of pursuit. But Valdrick was faster. They hit the tree line and kept going. Branches whipped at Senna's arms and legs. The forest grew darker, denser. The sounds of pursuit faded, disappeared entirely. Still, Valdrick ran. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. Senna's fingers cramped from gripping his fur. Finally, as dusk began to creep through the trees, Valdrick slowed. They emerged into a clearing dominated by a rocky outcropping. A cave mouth yawned in the stone face. Dark, hidden, defensible. Valdrick padded inside and stopped. Senna slid off his back on shaking legs. The air shimmered. Bones cracked. And then the man was there again, naked and panting. "We're safe," he rasped. "For now." Senna's legs buckled. She sat down hard on the cave floor. "You killed them," she whispered. "All of them." "Not all." Valdrick's voice was grim. "Malachor has hundreds of hunters. Those were just the nearest pack." He moved deeper into the cave, checking for threats. "They'll track us, but it will take time." Senna stared at her trembling hands. "I can't do this. I'm not a fighter. I'm not a spy. I'm just a healer who couldn't ignore a dying wolf." Footsteps approached. Valdrick crouched in front of her. "You survived," he said quietly. "You didn't freeze. You didn't scream. When I told you to run, you ran. When I told you to climb on my back, you climbed. I was terrified. So was I." His admission shocked her into silence. 3 months in that cage, Senna. 3 months unable to shift, unable to speak. "I thought I would die in that market." His hand rose, hesitated, and then gently pushed a strand of hair from her face. "Then you appeared. A poor Omega with 5 coins and no reason to care about a dying beast. And you bought me anyway." Senna's throat tightened. "You don't owe me anything," she managed. "I owe you everything." The words were simple, absolute. "And I always pay my debts." She woke to firelight and the smell of cooking meat. Valdrick was crouched by a small fire near the cave entrance. He'd found clothes somewhere, worn traveling leathers that had seen better days. "There was a trader's cache a mile west," he said. "Abandoned. I took what we needed." They ate in silence. The meat was rabbit. Gamey, but filling. "The resistance camp," she said finally. "What should I expect?" Valdrick's expression flickered. "Expect suspicion. The resistance has been fighting Malachor's forces for 3 months. They've learned to trust no one. And when they see you with an unknown Omega, they'll have questions. I'll handle them. You just need to stay close to me." They traveled for 2 more days. By the time they reached the hidden valley, Senna's body ached in ways she hadn't known were possible. Guards materialized from the rocks when they were 50 yards out. 4 of them, armed with crossbows. "State your business," the lead guard demanded. Valdrick stopped walking. Slowly, deliberately, he pulled back his hood. The guards' faces went white. "My business," Valdrick said quietly, "is with Commander Harlan. Tell him his king has returned." Chaos erupted. A grizzled man pushed through the gathering crowd, tall, scarred, with salt and pepper beard and eyes that had seen too much death. "Your Majesty," he breathed, We thought. They told us. They lied. Valdrick's voice carried across the suddenly silent crowd. Malachor bound me in wolf form and sold me like cattle. I spent 3 months in chains, waiting to die. He drew attention to Senna for the first time. This woman found me. She spent her last coins to buy a dying beast because she couldn't bear to let it suffer. She broke Malachor's seal with her bare hands. Every eye in the camp fixed on Senna. She is under my protection, Valdrick continued. Anyone who threatens her, questions her, or touches her without permission will answer to me personally. They were halfway across the camp when a voice cut through the murmurs. Well, if it isn't little Senna Thornwood? Senna's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice, had heard it in her nightmares for 3 years. Slowly, she turned. A man stepped out of the crowd, tall, blonde, handsome in a cruel way. Hello, sister, said the man who had destroyed her life. I've been looking for you for a very long time. Senna couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at the face that had haunted her for 3 years. Corvin Thornwood, her half-brother, the legitimate son who had inherited everything while she, the bastard daughter, had inherited only pain. Cat got your tongue? Corvin's smile widened. You always were the quiet one. Valdrick moved before Senna could process what was happening. One moment, Corvin was smirking. The next, he was pinned against the nearest tent pole, Valdrick's forearm crushing his throat. You know her, Valdrick said quietly. Too quietly. Corvin's face was turning purple. She's my sister. Half-sister. The words scraped out of Senna's throat. We share a father. That's all. Valdrick's arm pressed harder. Why is she afraid of you? What did you do to her? The alpha command in Valdrick's voice resonated through the air like a physical force. Your Majesty. Harlan stepped forward carefully. Corvin has been with the Resistance for over a year. He's one of our most valuable scouts. I don't care if he's the goddess incarnate. Valdrick didn't take his eyes off Corvin's face. He hurt her. I want to know how. Senna's hand touched Valdrick's arm. The muscle beneath her fingers was iron hard, trembling with barely contained rage. Not here, she whispered. Please. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Valdrick released Corvin with a shove. Stay away from her, Valdrick commanded. If I see you within 20 feet of her, I'll assume you mean harm. Corvin rubbed his throat, his eyes burning with humiliation. You don't know what she is. What she did. I know exactly what she is. Valdrick's voice cut like a blade. She's the woman who saved my life. And that makes her worth more than every person in this camp combined. The tent they were given was small, but private. Someone had left fresh clothes, a basin of water, and a simple meal. Senna sat on the edge of the cot, her hands clasped in her lap, staring at nothing. Valdrick closed the tent flap and turned to face her. Tell me, he said quietly. You don't need to. I want to know. Who is he to you? What did he do? Senna's eyes burned. She hadn't cried in 3 years. But now, with this scarred king demanding to share her burden, the walls she'd built began to crack. My father had an affair with a healer from the village. She got pregnant. He promised to take care of her, to acknowledge the child. You. Me. Senna's laugh was hollow. I was allowed to live in the servants' quarters, but I was never family, never equal. And your gift? Senna's hand went to her shoulder. The brand beneath her dress seemed to burn. It manifested when I was 16. I could sense things. Illness, injury, sometimes emotions. I thought it was a blessing. She shook her head. There was a plague in the village. People were dying. I could sense which ones would survive and which wouldn't. I told my father. I thought he could use the information to help. Her voice cracked. He called me a witch. Said my gift was unnatural. Evil. Corvin. She couldn't finish. What did Corvin do? Valdrick's voice was soft, but something dangerous lurked beneath. He dragged me to the village square at midnight. He branded me with the witch's mark while our father watched. Tears spilled down her cheeks. He said it was mercy, that they could have burned me. She was sobbing now, 3 years of buried grief pouring out of her. I ran that night. I didn't stop until I found Brackenmore, a place I could hide what I am. Warm hands cupped her face. Valdrick tilted her head up until she met his eyes. "Show me," he said. "What?" "The brand. Show me what they did to you." Senna's pulse raced. No one had seen it since that night. But Valdrick's eyes held no judgment, only a fierce, burning certainty. Slowly, with trembling fingers, Senna pulled aside the collar of her dress. The brand was the size of her palm, seared into the flesh of her shoulder. A crude symbol, a circle with a line through it, the mark given to those accused of dark magic. Valdrick stared at it for a long moment. Then he leaned forward and pressed his lips to the scar. Senna stopped breathing. His mouth was gentle against her damaged skin, soft as a whisper, reverent as a prayer. He kissed the brand like it was something precious rather than shameful. "You are not evil," he murmured against her skin. "You are not unnatural. You are a gift, Senna." Senna couldn't speak, could barely think. Valdrick pulled back slightly, his face inches from hers. "Your brother is in this camp. He may try to hurt you again. So I need you to hear me when I say this." His hand rose to cup her cheek. "I will not let him touch you. For as long as you are with me, you are under my protection. Not as a pretense, but because I choose to protect you. Because you are worth protecting." Senna's voice emerged as a whisper. "Why?" Something raw and uncertain crossed Valdrick's expression. "Because when I was nothing but a dying beast in a cage," he said slowly, "you were the only person in the world who thought I was worth saving." He stood abruptly, turning away. "Rest. I need to meet with Harlan. We'll talk more in the morning." He was gone before she could respond. Senna sat alone in the tent, her shoulders still tingling where his lips had touched. And she realized, with a terror that eclipsed everything she'd felt before, that she was falling in love with the Alpha King. 3 weeks passed in the resistance camp. 3 weeks of strategy meetings and supply runs. 3 weeks of Valdrick planning his return to power while Senna learned to navigate a world she'd never been part of. And 3 weeks of something else growing between them. It started small. Valdrick seeking her out after meetings, asking her opinion on troop movements as if her thoughts mattered. Senna bringing him tea when she noticed he hadn't slept. Small gestures, stolen moments, but they accumulated like snowfall, each one adding to the weight of something neither of them named. "You're staring," Valdrick said without looking up from the map spread across the table. Senna's cheeks flushed. "I was thinking... about?" They were alone in the command tent, afternoon light filtering through canvas. "You're pushing yourself too hard," she said. "The curse, it's still affecting you. I can see it." Valdrick's jaw tightened. "I'm fine." "You're not." She moved closer. "You shift less than you should. When you do shift, you can't hold the form as long. And you're cold, Valdrick. All the time." He went very still. "I'm a healer," Senna continued quietly. "I may not understand magic the way Malachor does, but I understand bodies. And yours is fighting something. Something that's winning." "Malachor's binding collar didn't just trap me in wolf form," Valdrick said finally. "It did something else. Something I didn't understand until I shifted back." He turned to face her, and Senna saw the truth in his eyes, the exhaustion he'd been hiding, the fear he refused to acknowledge. "He cursed my ability to bond." Senna frowned. "Bond? With a mate?" The word seemed to cost him. "Alphas need bonds. We're not meant to exist alone. A bond with a true mate grounds us, keeps our wolves from consuming everything we are. Understanding dawned, cold and terrible. And without a bond, the wolf grows stronger. The man grows weaker. Valdrick's voice was flat. Eventually, the balance tips. The man disappears entirely, and what's left is just a beast. Powerful, but mindless. That's what he wanted, Senna breathed. He didn't just want you gone, he wanted to use you. Yes. Valdrick's hands clenched. Every day, I feel more of myself slipping away. Senna's chest ached. There has to be a way to break it. There is. He met her eyes. A true mate bond. If I could bond with someone, really bond, not just mark them, but bind my soul to theirs, it might shatter Malachor's magic. Then find someone. The words came out before she could stop them, and they tasted like ash. I don't want anyone. The statement hung in the air. Valdrick took a step toward her, then another. 3 weeks, he said quietly. 3 weeks of watching you navigate a camp full of strangers. 3 weeks of watching you tend wounded fighters and calm frightened refugees and face your monster of a brother without flinching. Another step. 3 weeks of waking up thinking about you and falling asleep thinking about you and wondering what it would feel like to actually touch you. Senna couldn't breathe. Valdrick, I know it's absurd. His voice cracked. I know you deserve better than a cursed king fighting a losing war. He stopped directly in front of her. But I can't stop wanting you, and I don't know what to do with that. Senna's hand rose of its own accord, pressing against his chest. Beneath her palm, his heart raced. You're so cold, she murmured. I know. Let me help you. She didn't know what she was offering, but her gift stirred beneath her skin, responding to the wrongness she could feel in him. Warmth flowed from her palm into his chest, but not ordinary warmth. This felt brighter, fiercer, like embers catching flame. Valdrick gasped, his eyes widening. What are you? I don't know. Senna pressed harder. I just know you need it. I can feel the curse freezing you from the inside out. The magic could hurt you. I don't care. The words burst out with a ferocity that surprised them both. I don't care if it hurts me. You're dying. Slowly, maybe, but dying. And I can't just watch that happen. I can't lose you. Her voice broke on the last word. Valdrick stared at her, something crumbling behind his eyes. Senna, he breathed. Then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was everything, and nothing like she'd imagined. His lips were cold at first, but they warmed against hers as heat flowed between them. His hands cradled her face with tenderness that made her crack open. She kissed him back with everything she had, every lonely night, every year spent hiding. The warmth in her palms intensified. She felt Valdrick shudder as heat poured into him. And then, pain. White-hot agony lanced through Senna's chest. She cried out, breaking the kiss, stumbling backward. Senna! Valdrick caught her. What's wrong? She couldn't answer. The pain was blinding. Her gift had never hurt before. But this wasn't her gift. This was something else. Through the agony, Senna became aware of a new sensation, a thread of light stretching between her heart and Valdrick's. A connection that hadn't existed a moment ago. A bond. Oh gods, Valdrick whispered. Senna, what did we do? The tent flap burst open. Harlan stood in the entrance. Your Majesty, we have a... He stopped, taking in the scene. What happened? Get out, Valdrick snarled. It's urgent. A messenger just arrived from the capital. Malachor knows where we are. He's coming. With the entire royal army. I said get out! Harlan retreated. Valdrick turned back to Senna, cradling her against his chest. The pain was fading now, leaving behind something else, an awareness of him that went deeper than her senses. She could feel his emotions, fear, guilt, and beneath it all, A fierce, burning love. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. "I don't know." His voice was hoarse. "But I think we started a bond. Without meaning to." He stopped mid-word. His face went gray. "Valdric?" His eyes rolled back. Frost erupted across his skin, spreading from his chest outward like cracks in ice. His breath emerged in white clouds, then stopped entirely. He collapsed in her arms. "Valdric!" Senna's scream brought half the camp running, but she didn't notice them. Didn't notice anything except the man in her arms, his skin turning blue, his lips going white, his heart stuttering against her palms. The curse. It had sensed the bond forming, and instead of breaking, it had struck back. Senna refused to leave his side. 3 days. 3 days of watching Valdric lie motionless on the cot, his skin covered in frost that reformed as quickly as she could melt it. 3 days of pouring her gift into him until she collapsed from exhaustion, only to wake and start again. The resistance healers had done what they could, which was nothing. Malachor's magic was beyond their understanding. "You need to rest," Harlan said from the tent entrance. "You're killing yourself." Senna didn't look up from Valdric's face. "Then I'll die." "He wouldn't want—" "I don't care what he'd want." Her voice cracked. "He's dying because of me, because I tried to help him and instead I—" She couldn't finish. Harlan was silent. "There might be another way." Senna's head snapped up. "Malachor's magic is based on something," Harlan said slowly. "Every curse has a source. If we could find what powers his magic, we might counter it." "How?" "We have a prisoner. One of Malachor's scouts. He hasn't talked, but—" "I'll make him talk." The voice came from behind Harlan. Corvin stepped into the tent. "Get out," Senna snarled. "Wait." Corvin raised his hands. "I know you hate me, but I know things about Malachor's magic that could help." "Why would you help?" Something flickered across Corvin's face, something that might have been shame. "Because I've done terrible things, Senna. Things I can't take back. But maybe I can do one good thing before the end." The prisoner was a wiry man with hollow cheeks and wild eyes, bound to a chair in a supply tent. He laughed when he saw Senna. "The king's whore. Malachor told us about you." Senna ignored the taunt. "Tell me about the curse." "Why would I do that?" "Because if you don't, I'll let her brother handle the interrogation." The prisoner's bravado flickered. "You don't understand. Malachor's magic. It's tied to something ancient." "What does that mean?" "Blood." The word came out as a whisper. "His power comes from blood. Royal blood. He's been harvesting it for years." Senna's stomach turned. "Harvesting how?" "The old king, Valdric's father. Malachor kept him alive in the dungeon for months before he finally died. Drained him slowly, used every drop." The tent seemed to spin. Valdric's father hadn't died in battle. He'd been murdered, tortured. And the curse on Valdric? The binding collar was soaked in his father's blood. That's what gave it power over the royal line. Senna's mind raced. "But I weakened it. When I poured my gift into him, the frost retreated." The prisoner's eyes sharpened. "You pushed back the curse? That's... unless..." "Unless what?" He studied her face with new intensity. "What kind of gift do you have exactly?" "I'm a healer. I sense illness and injury." "No." The prisoner shook his head slowly. "That's not what I felt when they brought me in. There's something else in you. Something older." Senna's brand seemed to burn beneath her dress. "Fire magic," the prisoner breathed. "You have fire magic, but it's different, purified, life-giving." "That's absurd," Corvin said sharply. "She was tested when she was young." "Your tests were wrong, or maybe it was dormant." The prisoner's voice became almost reverent. "I can see it now. a flame burning at her core, a flame that could purify anything, even Malachor's blood magic. Senna's chest tightened. How? Blood magic is cold, dead. It feeds on pain and suffering. But your fire? It's the opposite. Alive. Healing. The prisoner laughed wildly. You could burn the curse right out of him. But it would cost you? Cost me what? The prisoner's laughter died. Everything. A purifying fire that strong would consume you completely. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. No, Corvin said immediately. But Senna's mind was already racing. She could save Valdric, break the curse and free him. All she had to do was die. That night, Senna sat beside Valdric's bed, holding his frozen hand. I know what I have to do, she whispered, and I know you'd hate it. No response. But through the bond, she felt a faint pulse of warmth. I couldn't let you die. Not when every moment I've spent with you has been the happiest of my life. Tears slid down her cheeks. You showed me what it felt like to be worth something. To be protected instead of punished. To be loved instead of feared. She pressed his hand against her heart. So I'm going to save you. Even if it destroys me. The bond between them pulsed. Stronger this time. And for just a moment Valdric's fingers tightened around hers. The next morning, Corvin found her. You can't do this, he said. Watch me. Senna. He grabbed her arm. I know I have no right to ask anything. I know what I did was unforgivable. But please, don't throw your life away. Senna studied her half-brother's face. For the first time, she saw past the cruelty to something that looked almost like genuine concern. Why do you care? Corvin's face crumpled. Because I was wrong. Because father filled my head with poison, and I was too weak to see through it. Because every day for 3 years I've woken up remembering your screams and wishing I could take it back. Senna's chest clenched. There's something else, Corvin continued quietly. Something I need to tell you. What? He took a deep breath. A few weeks ago, one of Malachor's spies approached me. I'd been with the Resistance for over a year by then, but I didn't know how deep his reach went. Senna went cold. What did you do? I told them about you. About your abilities. About the brand. Corvin's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I thought if Malachor captured you, he'd leave our family alone. I sold you out. The hunters, Senna breathed. The ones who came to my cottage, they knew exactly where to find me. Because I told them. Corvin fell to his knees. I'm so sorry. Senna stared down at her brother. This broken, pitiful man who had hurt her more than anyone else in her life. She should hate him. Should want him dead. But all she felt was exhaustion. Get up, she said quietly. Corvin looked up, confusion in his eyes. I don't forgive you. I may never forgive you. But right now, there's something more important than our past. What? Malachor's army will be here tomorrow. The king is dying. And I'm apparently the only person who can stop both. She met his eyes. So you can either help me, or get out of my way. Corvin stared at her for a long moment. Then he straightened his shoulders. Tell me what you need. The ritual required 3 things: a circle of protection, a conduit for the magic, and an anchor to keep Senna from losing herself completely. Harlan provided the circle, an ancient design meant to contain and focus magical energy. The conduit was Senna herself, her gift, her fire, everything she was, and the anchor. Are you sure about this? Corvin asked as Senna knelt beside Valdric's frozen body. No, she admitted. But I'm doing it anyway. She placed her hands on Valdric's chest, directly over his heart. Even through his clothes, the cold was terrible. The bond between us wasn't complete when the curse struck back, but it's still there. She closed her eyes. I'm going to follow it. If I can reach him on the other side, maybe I can pull him back. And if you can't? Senna didn't answer. She reached for her gift, calling the warmth at her core. But this time, she didn't hold back. She let it rise like a tide, filling every part of her with golden heat. And then she poured it into Valdric. The world dissolved. Senna found herself standing in a landscape of ice. Frozen trees stretched toward a colorless sky. Snow covered everything, pristine and terrible. And the cold was absolute. But she burned. Golden fire wreathed her body, pushing back the frost wherever it tried to touch her. She was a torch in the darkness. "Valdric!" she screamed. Her voice echoed across the frozen wasteland, then faded into nothing. She started walking. The landscape shifted as she moved. Shapes moved in the mist, wolves made of frost, their eyes empty and hungry. They circled her but didn't approach, kept at bay by her fire. Time lost meaning. She walked for what felt like hours. Then she saw him. A figure in the distance, kneeling in the snow, silver hair falling around his face, chains of ice binding his arms, his legs, his throat. "Valdric!" Senna ran. He looked up as she approached, and her chest shattered. His eyes were gray, just gray now, with no trace of gold. Frost clung to his lashes, his lips, and his hair. "Senna?" His voice was barely a whisper. "You shouldn't be here. I'm taking you home." She reached for the chains. "Don't." He pulled away. "If you touch them, the curse will take you too." "I don't care. I do." His cold eyes met hers. "You should have let me die." "That was never an option." Senna knelt before him, her fire blazing brighter. "Don't you understand? From the moment I saw you in that cage, I knew. I knew you were worth saving. I knew you were worth everything. Senna, I love you." The words came out fierce and bright, burning away the cold. "I love you, Valdric. Not the king, not the alpha. You, the man who showed me kindness when he had no reason to. The man who kissed my scars and called them beautiful." Tears were freezing on her cheeks, but she didn't care. "So I'm going to burn these chains. I'm going to burn this curse. And I'm going to bring you home, even if I have to burn myself to nothing to do it." She grabbed the chains. Agony, white-hot and all-consuming, tore through her. The curse fought back with everything it had, but Senna was done being extinguished. She thought of every moment of cruelty she'd endured. The brand on her shoulder, the brother who had given it to her, her mother, dead before Senna ever knew her, her father, who had never loved her. And she thought of Valdric, his hand in hers, his lips on her scars, his voice telling her she was worth protecting. The fire inside her blazed brighter than the sun, the chains shattered. Valdric gasped, his eyes flooding with gold, pure, brilliant, beautiful. The frost retreated, color returned to his face, life returned to his eyes. "Senna," he breathed. The frozen landscape began to crack, great fissures spreading across the ice. Light poured through the gaps, warm, golden light. Valdric caught her as her legs gave out. "Hold on," he commanded. "Don't you dare let go." Senna tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come. She had given too much, burned too bright. Darkness closed in. She woke to sunlight, real sunlight, warm and golden, streaming through a window. Birds sang somewhere nearby. "She's awake!" Footsteps thundered. The room filled with people. Harlan, Corvin, healers she didn't recognize, and Valdric. He pushed through the crowd, his face haggard with exhaustion, but his eyes burning with relief. "Everyone out," he ordered. They scattered like leaves. Then he was beside her, his hands cupping her face, his forehead pressed against hers. "3 days," he said hoarsely. 3 days you've been unconscious. I thought I'd lost you." takes more than a blood curse to kill me," Senna managed weakly. Valdric laughed, a real laugh, bright and warm. "You beautiful, reckless woman." He kissed her. Not gentle this time. He kissed her like she was air and he was drowning, and she kissed him back with everything she had left. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Valdric's eyes were wet. "The curse is broken," he said. "Completely. Malachor's magic is gone." "And Malachor?" Valdric's expression hardened. "His army arrived yesterday, but without his blood magic they were just men. We routed them in less than an hour." He paused. Malachor himself tried to flee back to the capital. Harlan's scouts intercepted him at the mountain pass. "Is he dead?" "Awaiting execution. We'll carry out the sentence when we take back the throne." He squeezed her hand. "I wanted you there. I wanted you to see justice done." Senna closed her eyes, letting his warmth anchor her. "And the kingdom?" "Mine again. Or it will be, once we march on the capital. But there's something I need to do first." She opened her eyes. "What?" Valdric reached into his pocket and withdrew something small and golden, a ring set with a stone the exact color of his eyes. "This was my mother's," he said quietly. "She gave it to my father on their bonding day. A promise that wherever they went, whatever happened, they would face it together." Senna's pulse quickened. "I know we started a bond accidentally, but it's real, Senna. What I feel for you, it's the realest thing I've ever known." He held out the ring. "I'm not asking you to be my queen. I'm asking you to be my mate, my partner, the person I face everything with." Tears spilled down Senna's cheeks. "You bought me for 5 coins," Valdric said softly. "You saw something worth saving when the rest of the world saw nothing. So let me spend the rest of my life being worthy of that faith." Senna took the ring. It fit perfectly. 6 months later, the great hall of Arendor's capital was packed with nobles, dignitaries, and common folk alike. They had come to witness history, the formal bonding of King Valdric and his mate. Senna stood at the altar, wearing a gown of gold and white, her brand displayed openly for the first time in her life. At her shoulder stood Corvin, pardoned for his betrayal, but sworn to a lifetime of service, a penance he had accepted willingly. Valdric waited at the altar's center, magnificent in black and silver, his eyes never leaving her face. "You're staring," she murmured as she reached him. "I'll stare until I die," he replied, "and probably after." The ceremony was brief. Wolves didn't need elaborate rituals, they needed only truth. "I claim you," Valdric said, his voice carrying across the hall. "As my mate, my partner, my heart. Where you go, I follow. What you face, I face beside you. Until death and beyond it." Senna's eyes burned. "I claim you," she replied, "as my mate, my partner, my heart. I was lost, and you found me. I was broken, and you saw me whole. Until death and beyond it." Valdric's teeth found the curve of her neck, gently, tenderly. The bond between them blazed to completion. The crowd erupted in cheers. Later, as they stood on the palace balcony watching fireworks paint the sky, Valdric pulled her close. "Regrets?" he asked. Senna thought about everything that had brought her here. The beast market. The 5 copper coins. Every moment of pain and hope that had led to this instant. "None," she said. "Not a single one." Valdric kissed the top of her head. "Neither do I." Far below, the people of Arendor celebrated. Not just their king's return, but the dawn of something new. A kingdom where gifts were nurtured, not punished. Where the broken could be healed. Where love could burn bright enough to shatter any curse. And in the heart of the palace, wrapped in her mate's arms, Senna finally understood what it meant to be home. Not a place, not a kingdom. Just this. Just him. Just them. Forever.